Hello, everyone. Welcome to this talk. I'm very excited you're here. My name is Jana Frejova, and I am a lawyer by training, but a product marketer by passion and by trade. And after several years working for global software companies in London and Brussels, I landed in Paris, where I'm today working at building a new marketing function focused on product-led growth at Spendesk. You may be asking, who is Spendesk? Well, I'm very glad you've asked. So Spendesk is a complete spend management solution. We are serving over 3,500 companies, and we have managed almost 8 billion euro in cash since our inception in 2016. Last year, we were also voted the best fintech in Europe to work for, so I'm really proud to work here. And earlier this year, after our Series C extension, we became a unicorn, and even the President Emmanuel Macron tweeted about us, so that was a real highlight of my career. But back to the talk of today. So I think in our private life, we are defined by the choices we make. Do you prefer cats or dogs? Do you prefer chocolate or vanilla ice cream? Do you prefer tea or coffee? And I think when it comes to product-led businesses, the choice that defines us is between freemium and free trial. So in this talk, I'd love to talk about a choice, and I would also love to take you through 6 key questions to ask if you're standing in front of the dilemma right now. So let's get going. And as always, we have to start with some fun definitions. So let's define freemium and free trial. So both of them are acquisition strategies that are incentivizing prospects to try a product because they're offering something or they're offering some value for free with the hope of converting these prospects into paying customers. Where they differ, though, is where they place the limit on what's free. So free trial is very simple. You basically get complete or partial access to the product for free for a limited period of time. And this is most often between 2 and 4 weeks. On the other hand, freemium is a little bit more complex because you get access to the product for free for an unlimited time, but there are different levers that companies can use to play around with the limits, and they can often choose between one or several of these options. So one of the limits is the feature scope. Often freemium is just very basic version of the product that still gives the prospect the idea of the product value. The second type of limit is the usage. I think we all know and love the 40-minute limit on Zoom video calls. The third one is support. Often freemium offerings have very scaled back user care. And I think that's why we've also seen such a rise in user communities, because that's essentially outsourcing user care for free product to cut the costs. And finally, some companies put an additional barriers when it's freemium, for example, ads, or they use branding, or they use watermarks, which doesn't distract from the core value of the product, but it adds some friction. Both freemium and free trial have really powerful outcomes. They're famous to reduce CAC because they're basically creating a pipeline with prospects with a higher intent. They're easier to scale because they rely less on sales and they have shorter sales cycles. They often use very powerful growth cycles that are self-perpetuating. So that's why companies love to try out freemium or free trial. But they have slightly different outcomes when it comes to metrics. So this is really, and I highly recommend a study by OpenView, the product benchmark survey. They have always like amazing data. I can't wait to read. And they did an analysis of what the average metrics are for product-led businesses. And they found out that for every 1,000 of visits, you get roughly 60 signups on freemium, and 3 paying customers. This is because freemium really opens up the top of the funnel way more than free trial. But at the same time, there is no time limit. So there is no urgency for the prospects to actually go and become paying customers. That's why the conversion rate is a little bit lower than for free trial. On the other hand, as we see with free trial, for every 1,000 website visits, you get about 30 free signups. And the conversion rate from the free sign up to a paying customer is about 17%, compared to 5% for freemium. So you get about 5 paying customers. I think one of the differences is also how many of those 1,000 website visits you get. For the freemium business model, it'll be a lot more because often you're going after a lot bigger market, as we will discuss later. But now let's actually look at the 6 questions to ask if you're standing in front of this dilemma. So the first question is about the user segment and market strategy that you're pursuing. The second question is around how complex your product is and how steep the learning curve is. The third one is around if you can actually afford it. Another question to ask is also if the end user you're targeting is actually willing to pay to become a customer. Another question we have to consider as well is what type of user or what type of prospect you're going after. Is it a decision maker or end user with simple or complex needs? And finally, what is the size of the market and the opportunity that you're going after? So let's look at each of these questions in more detail. So let's start with the first one, the user segment. And this is based on the famous mode framework by Wes Bush, who basically aligned each market strategy with a particle version of free that is best suited for that market strategy. And there are 3 key market strategies to look at. The first one is the dominant market strategy. In this, you're going after everyone in the market, and your place essentially that you're doing something better than all your competition, but at a lower price. This is really the holy grail of software, right? Great examples here are, for example, Netflix or Uber. And for this strategy, either freemium or free trial work. So you have really flexibility in terms of the options. The second strategy is the disruptive strategy. And here you're focusing on what's called the overserved market. The idea here is that you offer a product that's simpler, or you can almost say inferior, but at a lower price. So you can, for example, you can think of Canva versus Adobe or Google Docs versus Microsoft Word. Both Canva and Google Docs are super simple to use because they're a scaled-back version of Adobe or Microsoft. So they're really easier to use. Even I can use Canva, I can't use Adobe. And for this, freemium is a really great choice because those products have really low complexity and almost no learning curve. And this is also their advantage over the competition. And the third market strategy is to be differentiated, is to focus on the underserved market. The idea here is that there are generic solutions that dominate the market, but because they're generic, they don't meet everyone's needs perfectly. They just meet everyone's needs at an okay level. So you focus on a particular segment within that market and you offer a product that's specialized to that segment. And because you're specializing, you're going after a slightly smaller market. Because you're specializing, your product may be also a little bit more complex or may require a slightly steeper learning curve. And because of those reasons, free trial is way better fit here than a freemium. The second question is the complexity and the learning curve, which we have just mentioned as well. This is actually contextual because it depends on your user in terms of what they can actually handle. With freemium, you're trying to go after as big a market as possible. So the lowest common denominator is no knowledge of that particular solution or very little knowledge. So here you really go after freemium is really good for products with low complexity and no learning curve. On the other hand, as we just discussed, free trial is ideal solution if the prospect has more specialized needs or if the market is a little bit smaller. So here you can deal with slightly bigger complexity or steeper learning curve, but it still shouldn't be super complex or super hard to learn. In that case, you will have to go back to demo and sales-led growth. The examples I thought that illustrate this point quite well is Deliveroo and HelloFresh. Deliveroo is you basically have no learning curve in terms of cooking. You just order food for someone else to cook because we assume you have no cooking skills. So this is really no learning curve, very low complexity. On the other hand, HelloFresh They give you the ingredients, they give you very simple guidance on how to cook. This is cooking as easy as it gets. But still, you demonstrate that you can do some of those tasks. You can do some basic cooking. So here you can handle a slightly more complex product in terms of cooking your food, actually. The third question to ask is, can you actually afford having free users? Because the goal, the dream of Freemium is that there is a huge influx of free users, but it also means that this has impact on your business, because it's going to increase your costs of doing your business, because every user costs something, but these users don't pay for themselves. It also impacts your performance, and it can also impact your care resources. So for the financial impact, Chris Anderson actually puts forward this rule of 5%. That means that if you're a freemium business, very likely 95% of your customers are free customers, and only 5% of your customers are actually paying customers. So can the 5% pay for the other 95% that are not paying? So if it's yes, if they can pay, you can go with freemium. The second is performance. And I think a really great article is written by Josh Pickford, the founder of Barometrics, where he's very honest and open about how their freemium was so successful, it almost imploded their business. This was because freemium offer brought on a lot of customers that impacted the performance of the product. And as a result, they saw a huge churn in the paying customers. So they actually decided to go back and cancel their free plan completely. And finally, a lot of free users may have pressure on your care teams. And that's why a lot of companies have actually established user communities. So this is another aspect to consider. The fourth question to ask is your target user actually willing to pay? Because often, if a freemium model is targeting small companies that have very simple needs, their needs may be fully met by freemium, and they may not have the need to upgrade to a paying solution. And there have been a ton of examples of those companies, actually. I think one case in point is, for example, Chargebee. Their initial free offering actually gave customers 10 invoices a month for free, which actually ended up attracting a lot of small consulting companies that only needed up to 10 invoices a month. So Chargebee initially saw a very low conversion rate to paying customers. So they actually decided to completely change their approach to free, and they only gave free to customers for their first 50,000 in revenue. There are also other companies who tried free or freemium, and they realized they were only attracting these small companies who never wanted to upgrade. And they couldn't quite crack the code. They couldn't find the right packaging that would attract the right type of user. And they just ended up going away from free completely. The fifth question to ask is who you are actually targeting. What are their needs? Are you going after decision makers? Well, in that case, they care about ROI. They care about scalability. These are aspects that you cannot demonstrate by the time limit on the free trial or by the limited usage or feature limit on the freemium. Also, they are often not adopted by the whole company. So it's very hard to demonstrate the values that the decision makers care about. Not to mention that decision makers are often not the users, so they would never go and actually use the product. So for decision makers, famously, demo is the best way. It's a sales-led approach. On the other hand, if you're targeting end user, this is where the freemium or free trial is a great fit, because often end user just cares about very simple needs. For example, I hate scheduling meetings, hence Calendly is a great example of freemium to an end user with simple needs. Some end users may have more complex or specialized needs, and in that case, free trial may be a good option for them. And the final question is the size of the market you're after. There were some really interesting calculations done, and I recommend, for example, Jason Lemkin. He actually calculated that for a freemium business to be successful, you need to be thinking about actually having about 50 million free users. Because once you consider conversion rate and consider how much you can actually get from a paying customer, these are the numbers that will make your business work. So for example, in Jason Lemkin's example, he got to the number of 50 million free users because he considered 2% conversion rate, and that you can get to a paying customer who pays about $10 a month per user. So obviously, if you're charging more or if your conversion rate is better, you can go after slightly smaller market, but as you can see, it's still pretty large market that you need to make work. On the other hand, free trial would work with either. There's probably benefits to go freemium if you have that big market opportunity, because it will amass more users. But free trial could work in small markets as well, as we have seen. So to recap, go freemium if you're serving everyone or the overserved. If your product has very low complexity and no learning curve, if you can afford it both financially and technically, if you're going after end user with simple needs, and if you have a large market opportunity. On the other hand, go with free trial if you're focusing on people with specialized needs, if you're going after the underserved. If your product has low to medium complexity and learning curve, if you cannot afford freemium for financial or technical reasons, free trial is a good backup option. And if your end user has simple or more complex needs. And finally, free trial gives you more option in terms of the market sizes. So this sums up my talk. If you want to read more about the choices and the questions, go to Saassy GtM, where there's actually a blog written about it specifically, where you can see more details. And otherwise, feel free to shoot me an email or ask after the talk if you have any questions. Thank you so much for attending this talk, and hopefully I'll see you at some point in real life.